computer. There we are. So, let's just see. Good to see you again, Jen. Welcome. And Kerry, who else? Yeah. Keith, several people now are rejoining me. You see from the classes I was doing with the Buddhist Society. Who's there from the Buddhist Society? I've got Christine and Simon. You didn't need to raise your hand, Simon, but thank you, yeah. And Simon, of course, as we all know, is a Samatha man as well, so he's here in two capacities. And Judith, Anne, Judy, and Keith and Finney. Goodness me, quite a few actually. A disproportionately high number are actually with me again from the previous classes I've been doing with the Buddhist Society for 5 years. I'm actually quite gratified that such a large proportion of people have stayed with me from the previous set of classes. Now, if I appear totally confident and with it and knowing what I'm doing in this class, it's all a facade. It's very difficult to know which way it'll go. I think I'll just hand myself over to the Delvers and see in what direction we're taken. In this class, we'll be looking at Garen Karunatilaka. As I explained, we'll be alternating the classes. So this week, Tuesday, today, Garen Karunatilaka, and on Saturday, we'll be doing something from our Samatha chanting book, starting with the Karanaya Metta Sutta. Next week, we will alternate it. So on Tuesday, we will be doing something from the chanting book, and on Saturday, we'll be continuing with the Garen Karunatilaka. I will take this opportunity to get it right. Dilly, are you there? You were there, are you there, Dilly? You were there a moment ago.
I'm here, yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Dilly. Yes, I'm going to take this opportunity to get the names right of the authors of the book that we're studying. Ger, of course, is okay. That's an English name. Am I correctly pronouncing Karunatilaka?
Karunatilaka.
Karunatilaka. Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dilly.
Yeah.
Now, in Karunatilaka, did I get that right this time, Dilly?
Pardon?
Did I get it right this time? Karunatilaka.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Very nice.
Thank you.
Better than that.
We have got we've got the readings followed by the grammar. You will have seen that in the printed book, there is a vocabulary given for each set of readings. And the vocabulary gives just a more or less one-to-one correspondence. Grossly oversimplified, I would say. And you might ask what value I'm adding here. Well, one of the value, I hope I'm adding a bit of value to something, but one of the values added is that we go into the individual words in some considerable depth. And with the etymology as well, and the linguistic history of them. Before too many of you groan at the idea of etymology and linguistic history, I too was somewhat doubtful. Now let me have a bit more light here. Somewhat doubtful when I started about introducing etymology, the linguistic history of the words, what it was in Proto-Indo-European, how it has developed through the Prakrits, Vedic, Sanskrit, Pali, then through Greek and Latin and the Germanic stream. And to my surprise and delight, I found that I don't think I've seen any exception of a student who was actually getting bored by it. Or maybe they were being polite. but there seemed to be a high degree of receptivity to etymology. And one of the points is that for those who are new to Pali, and the same applies to Sanskrit, and the same applies, in fact, to a whole lot of Indo-European languages that one is studying for the first time, but especially looking at Sanskrit and Pali. It just seems to those who are unfamiliar to be just in a series of noises, and you're told that they mean something, and you have to learn what they mean. In the great majority of cases, not all cases, but the great majority of cases, you can trace back what it really means inside, back to the root, and you can trace those roots forward into words that we're using in modern English. Those who, and we have two of them here, are native speakers of the direct descendants of those languages. I'm thinking particularly of Professor Nirmal with Hindi and Dili. Oh, Shinamala, welcome. We've got two Sinhala speakers here. You have got an advantage over us because the languages that you two speak, respectively Hindi, you three speak, respectively Hindi and Sinhala, direct descendants. And so the vocabulary that you are using in your everyday lives is actually quite close. I mean, separated by 2,500 years, but still pretty close to the vocabulary of Sanskrit and Pali. The vocabulary that we are using in English, and I think that most of us here are native English speakers, the vocabulary that we are using, in fact, is very similar. Welcome, Rosie. Very similar in many ways. It's just you have to dig a bit to see. I think we have only here just one non-native speaker of an Indo-European language, which is our good friend Qian Hui. So welcome, Qian Hui, who is a regular attender with Jai, who I think is also here at one of our Saturday classes at the center. So the purpose of going into linguistic history and etymology, as I said, when I started doing it some years ago, I was a little bit doubtful how it would be received. But the purpose is it brings the language to life. And the essence of what we're doing here is not to translate or just to work out in English what something means. There are some superbly good translations into English of the suttas, notably by Bhikkhu Bodhi, who incidentally is my absolute Pali translation hero, Bhikkhu Bodhi. But what we're doing, we're going beyond that, and we are stepping back inside the language, so you feel the force of it from the inside. And there are some interesting and fun and unexpected bits of etymology that will arise. So we've got readings and grammar. Rather than go through an entire big block of grammar all at the same time, I'm proposing to alternate a bit between some reading and some grammar. I will welcome feedback from you. It may be difficult to organize feedback with the numbers. Maybe it might be quite, no, we haven't got, the numbers aren't too bad. I did in several messages and emails to the group say, please don't all turn up at once. But the numbers that we have now are reasonably manageable. But I will welcome feedback as we go along. I'm going to share screen now. Sorry, there's always a little bit of a palaver when I start sharing screen. So bear with me when I share my screen. Screen one, share. Ba-dum, ba-dum. Then can you all see my iPad? Okay, great, fine.
Yes.
I always have to ask. I routinely mucked this up earlier. So we're going to start off looking at the first reading, and hopefully within the very first line of the first reading, we'll be venturing into new territory. I think most of you will have chanted the Buddhang Saranang Gacchami many, many times. And we're going to do a new take on it. Okay, can you now see my written analysis up on screen? Sorry, I have to ask people because I was mucking it up. So thanks, Jules. Oh, before I forget, we had what some of us thought was a disaster. I think it was Simon, you pointed out that the PTS dictionary online had disappeared. I checked again just before coming online now, and it's back, which is wonderful. The Pali Text Society's revised edition of their Pali English dictionary, that's the 2015 edition, the one that K.R. Norman was in charge of, is a considerable improvement over the 1925 one that we've been using for years and years. It had the enormous advantage of being online in a searchable copy. Simon and I and various others were alarmed when several days ago we just thought that it had disappeared. I thought forever. I was scrambling around to find an alternative, but anyway, it is now back. Were you showing us something, Simon? Oh, okay, you called it up on your computer, right? Good. That's a relief to us all because it's a very valuable resource. As time goes on, I'll be giving you a few little hints on how to use it. It is in fact very, very simple. So just going to look at the very first words here, or the first little chant, as we all know by chant, we all know it by heart, done it thousands of times, the Buddhang Saranang Gacchami. And with the same grammar, Dhammang Saranang Gacchami and Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. You will all hopefully by now have seen the videos that I have put up on roots and stems. Actually, the only naughty thing any of you could have done so far by this stage is not to have seen the videos on roots and stems. Normally, I'm a fairly relaxed kind of character. It was one thing you aren't allowed to ask me what's a root and what's a stem because you will all have seen the videos. So the root, let me just Gachami. It just so happens, it's Sod's law, that the very first verb that we encounter in this series of lessons happens to be slightly irregular. We have the root gam. By the way, the tick in front of a word, it represents it's the mathematical square root sign. We don't bother to write it like that. We just write it like that. and that indicates that the word that is so written is a root. The It so happens that this particular verb is slightly irregular. For I, it means to go. Now it's cognate with our English verb to come, gum, come. Hmm? It's from the same root. And if this were a regular verb, it would be, which it's not, it would be gamami, just add ami to the root. It's slightly irregular because the m changes to a ch, so that's why it's gachami. So you just have to, it just is. So gachami. So, so gachami simply means I go. In Pali and Sanskrit, if you are going to something, you use the accusative. We'll get to that in a moment. So we have the stem form vihara, for example. We have the masculine. Sorry. It is a masculine noun. We have the nominative form viharu, and we have the accusative viharam. So if you're saying, I'm going to the monastery, you say viharam gacchami. And if we have the stem Buddha, no, not the root, the stem, the root of that word is Buddh. We have this word Buddha, stem form, nominative Buddha, accusative Buddhang. So I go to the Buddha is Buddhang Gacchami. Now we have the Karana. I feel fairly sure that virtually everybody here is going to translate that as refuge. We talk about the three refuges. I go to the Buddha for refuge. That's not actually a wrong translation, but this is a really perfect example, which we're seeing now in our first line, of the inherent unsatisfactoriness, the inherent dukkha in translations. Because we have this standard translation, saranang, meaning refuge, but it's only part of the story. It's only part of it. There is the root, shar. I've done a note on it. Some of you may even have started to dip into my explanatory glossary. I'm just going to, hang on. I was getting to a bit of a pickle when I'm trying to deal with too many documents at the same time. There Let me just call it up. So, um, and here we are. By the way, I don't know if you've spotted when I have these odd things like a Z. This is just a device for electronic searching. Sanskrit and Pali do not have a Z, but if you're doing an electronic search on a keyboard that doesn't give you the sh, which I'm highlighting there, the alternative way of doing it, one way of looking up, and for example, the Monier-Williams dictionary has it, is you use a Z. Just be alert. It's purely a device for electronic search. Once you've done your electronic search, then just ignore the Z's. The Z, by the way, simply doesn't exist in Sanskrit or Pali. And you'll see I won't necessarily go through everything I've written in the explanatory glossary when I'm going through the vocabulary, but this is just an example. I kind of expand on it, that we have this root, shar, and from that root shar, we get various derivatives that we see in modern languages, even our English word shell, the Latin concelare, from which you get to conceal something sheltered or covered. We have the Schirm, the German Regenschirm, is that which protects you from the rain. The reason I've made a bit of a fuss about this word is to highlight the fact that when we talk about refuge, there can be the idea of a refugee. You are fleeing danger. So this word sharana, in Sanskrit sharana, Pali sarana, does embrace the meaning of something that you can run away, that you can flee to. But it's more than that. It's also the idea of an armor. It's like a protective armor. So rather like the Christian imagery, if I mentioned here, might have mentioned, yeah, I did mention St. Paul to the Ephesians, the shield of faith, the helmet of salvation, the sword of the Spirit. So the sarana is not necessarily something you run away to. It's also a protection that will enable you to go into the battle. It is the helmet of salvation. It's the helmet of, that's right, so Paul said, and the sword of the Spirit. So it embraces both meanings. Now, we don't have a single English word that can embrace all of those meanings, a refuge and a protection, something that enables you to go into battle safely. And this is one wonderful example of why we're learning Pali. So when you then look at the Pali word, get into that word and see it embraces both meanings. It is a refuge and something that keeps you safe. In German, the Regenschirm, a Regenschirm from that same root, is an umbrella. So with an umbrella, you aren't running away from the rain, you're going safely into the rain without getting wet. We have one surname among the Hindus, Sharma, for example. I think it's Professor. Is that typically Brahmin family name, Sharma? Okay, right. And again, that's the idea of somebody whose armor. The idea of armor there and protection, not the idea of running away. Also, I'm obliged to Greville, actually, who's not with the Greville, not many of you will know, who pointed out the word, the Scottish shields or shielings, which are very primitive protective buildings that are used by Scottish hill farmers in summer, in their summer sojourns. So these words, and also it comes as zaal, the Dutch zaal, and then the English word hall. So it turns up all over the place. And it's and a cell, as in a protective cell, and also the word shell. So here we are, we're seeing it turning up in all sorts of meanings, but all with brought the same underlying meaning, that which protects you and keeps you safe. So Buddhang Saranang Gacchami. So you go for refuge, Saranam Gacchami, Buddham Gacchami, I go to the Buddha. So you're going to the Buddha as refuge. You just put them both in the accusative. I should mention, by the way, I talked about the root shar. By the way, this little sign, those of you who've seen, which should be all of you by now, seen the video on diacritics. This S with a slash on the top just means it's a palatized sh. Incidentally, Sanskrit has, but Pali does not have the sh sound. In fact, Sanskrit has a s and a palatal sh and a retroflex sh, but they're all a s in Pali. So you have the sharana in Sanskrit is the sarana in Pali. That's a regular feature. You'll see it the entire time. So Buddhang Saranang Gacchami. And then they say for Dhammang Saranang Gacchami, Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. I will not attempt in this session to explore the huge range of meanings of Dhamma. In Sanskrit, Dharma. But I'll just mention that it's the root is Dri. Let me call up iPad again. See. By this is the R with a dot under it. It's a R sound, sometimes pronounced ru in modern India, but it's an or a R sound. It's although we write it as a consonant with a dot under it, the consonant R with a dot under it. In Sanskrit, it is a vowel, not a consonant. It's a vowel, and it's treated as a vowel. And from that, I won't do it right now, but from Drit we get Dharma. The Rit strengthens to Ar. So Dharma is originally the meaning of Dharma is that which was firm, solid, established. That's the original meaning. There's a bit of slightly weird etymology here because the sound occasionally, excuse me, occasionally, not always, turns up in Latin as an F. So this dri and dharma turns up in Latin as firmus. Etymologically, it's the same word, though the is mutated to a f. And that's firmus, which is where we get our English word firm, meaning firm and solid. And our expression, which we terra firma in Latin, terra firma, standing on terra firma. It's that exact meaning of the dharma, the firm land, that which is firm. And strangely enough, the dr sound came into Greek as a thro sound. So chronos in Greek, which we have as throne in English, it's the seat of firmness, the seat of power, the seat of solidity of the monarch. So when you see this word dharma, which then in Pali becomes dhamma, always bear in mind this anchor of meaning. The idea is that which is firm and solid. And it was by extension, I think a fairly natural kind of extension, that it became to mean something like the natural law, like the way things are. Not so much man-made law, but the natural law, the way things really are, which is how we often interpret the Dhamma. So I'll mention here that I often go back to Sanskrit. I'll be doing it the entire time. I know we are studying Pali, um, but there are so many things in Pali that you can only understand properly if you understand what they were in Sanskrit. Um, for example, the roots of verbs. Pali grammarians, not so much now, but in the past, Pali grammarians almost seem to have this shyness about, dare I use the word, contaminating themselves by referring to Sanskrit when they were trying to explain Pali. But you will now see that the modern dictionaries, I mean, the PTS dictionary, Margaret Cohn's dictionary, the modern grammarians now, they will all refer to the Sanskrit, or more strictly speaking, the Vedic root. And it'll become more and more apparent as we go along why we're doing this. This dri is one example. By the way, it's constantly happening that when I'm writing, I'm not doing it this moment, when I'm writing on my iPad, I forget to show the iPad on the screen. I leave another document up instead. Whenever that happens, please shout. It happens. I mean, it used to happen regularly, several times every lesson. I started writing on the iPad without sharing the screen, and I was shouted at correctly. Anyway, we're okay now. So this dre, and we know our Pali word dhamma. Now, unless you trace through the Sanskrit, dhamma doesn't really make any sense. I mean, linguistically, it doesn't make any sense. It's a word that's there, but you understand it by seeing that it comes from this root dre, and you by a process of vowel strengthening that I'll explain another time, the r becomes ar when you add the ma on as a noun, as a verbal noun ending. So the r becomes ar. We have dharma, which is then a regular formation from the root dre. Now, again, there are numerous, very, very numerous regular mutations from Sanskrit to Pali. For example, almost whenever you see in Sanskrit the consonant r followed by another consonant, as in dharma, what almost always happens in Pali is you double the second consonant, and that explains dhamma. And that explains how dhamma is actually traceable back to the root dri. And for example, we will be seeing in a moment, a little bit later, yes, in reading 2, we see the word atta. By the way, not to be confused with atta, meaning self. This atta, commonly translated as either as benefit or goal or objective. Again, you can understand the word, I mean, really understand the word by going back to the Sanskrit. There's the Sanskrit, I use Sanskrit and Vedic almost interchangeably. Vedic is the much older form of Sanskrit. In fact, we've got the Rig Veda, which goes back to something like 1800 BC. Now, there are, look, I don't want to get contentious here, but you will hear certain people saying that the Vedas go back 10,000 years in India. Well, it's a lovely idea, but all I can say is, sorry, chaps, the linguistic historical evidence is against you. It's a wonderful idea to think that the Vedas existed in India 10,000 years ago. I'm ready to be persuaded, but not by people shouting at me, but by real evidence. So far, the evidence is overwhelmingly in favour of the having been a migration into India, well, from the northwest, and that was the language that they brought with them. We're very fortunate in that we have a highly accurate and well preserved record of the language that was used 1800 years BC. BC we're talking about. My maths is terrible. So 1800 plus 2,500, whatever. I mean, goes back getting on for 4,000 years. And we've got this really accurate record of what Vedic was and still is. And you can still hear it being chanted. It's been beautifully, accurately preserved by Brahmins. And one way that we can be reasonably certain that the way that the Brahmins will chant it now has been well preserved is thanks to the internet. You can go onto the internet and you can find any number of Vedic or videos or Vedic chanting. Now, you can find videos done by these Brahmins, from Kashmir down to Tamil Nadu, from Gujarat to Bengal, and they are all chanting it in exactly or almost exactly the same way. People whose families, whose groupings have been living apart for millennia, still to this day, they are reciting it in exactly or almost exactly the same way. And that is very powerful evidence to show that it's a carefully preserved tradition. And we can be fairly sure that that was really how it was pronounced all that time ago. Also, we have a huge help in the wonderful grammarian Panini, who lived, his dates are uncertain actually, but approximately the time of the Buddha, who was probably the first serious analytical linguist in the history of the world. And there's so much that Panini has written, including about the way things are pronounced. There we have somebody from the time of the Buddha who's actually carefully and scientifically writing down for posterity, and we still have it. This is how this is pronounced. So that is why we have got really strong evidence as to how Vedic was pronounced. There's a little bit more uncertainty as to how Pali was pronounced, but I'm going to say that our best guess is it wasn't much different from the way that that Vedic and Sanskrit were pronounced, and my best guess is that it probably wasn't all that terribly different from the way modern Hindi is spoken. So when I am reading something to you in Pali, and I suppose even more so in Sanskrit, I'm doing my very best as a non-native speaker to sound a little bit like a Hindi speaker, which is why when Professor Nirmal is with us, I keep half an eye on him to see whether he's gesturing at me if my pronunciation has gone awry. So anyway, back to where we were. This word atta, I got sidetracked. Those of you who've been with me at the previous classes will know that very frequently we spend the entire class on sidetracks. We call them rabbit holes in our previous classes. Yeah, welcome, Adil Mateen. Welcome to you. Glad you could join us. So these rabbit holes actually constitute quite a fascinating part of the class. I was a little bit fearful that we might be so overwhelmed with numbers that we would not be able to have the personal interactions. But I'm seeing now that the numbers are, to my enormous relief actually, not too far beyond what I was used to with my old Sanskrit and Pali students up until July of this year. Anyway, back to where we were. So the point I'm making there is hopefully we will be able then now to have this personal interaction, everyone having a go and so on. Back to where we were. I gave you this root dre, that's the consonant the and the vowel r. There is a root that just consists of a single vowel. R. There are a few roots that just consist of a single vowel. Another root is just e. But r, the basic meaning of r is to go. It's one that there are several words meaning. Gum is one, e is another, r is the third one. So the several all have the same basic meaning of going. And there are several roots that make a verbal noun by the addition of the verbal noun suffix ta. It's just a way of making a verbal noun. And sometimes it is ata, ta, ata, essentially the same. So by a strengthening of the re, they call the guna form, it makes, just as dhrit becomes dharma, so rit becomes artha. So in Sanskrit, artha. And I'm doing this now because if you look down to reading 2, Chittam bhikkhave adantam mahato anattaya samvattati. That's the atta and anatta. So the Sanskrit word artha, from the root ri, meaning to go, it means literally a going. That's its literal root meaning. Now let's just expand on that. It also means where you're going, the artha, where are you going to? And so it means your goal or your objective or your destination. By further extension of meaning, it means that which is beneficial or good, what you're aiming for is artha. And so we have this anatta. By the way, don't confuse with anatta, non-self. This is anatta, useless, unbeneficial. And it also means wealth, on the grounds that wealth, property, possession is what people tend to want to get. It's their objective. It's what they're aiming for. It also means the meaning of a word. And you can see why. There is a word. What's the word getting at? What's it seeking to achieve? That is the artha of a word. So in the meaning of wealth, we have the Shastra, by the way, is teaching or science. And we have there's an ancient Sanskrit word called the Arthashastram, the wealth science, Arthashastram, which was written by the ancient equivalent of Rachel Reeves, but slightly more competent maybe. But we won't go into that here. About the economy, and he wrote this book for the guidance of the king. And in fact, in modern Hindi, I think I seem to remember asking you this about a year ago. The Arthashastra is actually is used in modern Hindi, meaning the economics as a science. I think, is that right, Professor? Thank you. So Artha. Now I was talking earlier about dharma. Dharma in Sanskrit becomes dhamma in Pali. So equally, artha in Sanskrit becomes by regular mutation pa in Pali. So it's from that root ri. Incidentally, this root ta or ata, let me give you samatha, right? From the root sham, Many of you will be very familiar with the verbal noun form in Sanskrit, shanti. Shanti, just generally meaning peace. We have I think the very well-known chant, some chants, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So Om, peace, so Shanti. And it makes, I'm deliberately writing it in Sanskrit here with the slash over the S for the sh. So it makes the verbal noun in Sanskrit shamatha, which literally means just calming or making peaceful. That's its literal meaning. And here it comes into Pali from Sanskrit. The only change is the change that you have to make anyway, because Pali doesn't have a sh, which is why in Pali it becomes samatha. So the word samatha and the well-known word shanti, meaning peace, from that same root. So what I'm going to do now is just to do a bit of grammar with you. So did I hear you all groan? We've got to do a bit of grammar. I mean, we can't escape from the grammar. Rather than read everything out, what I will assume that you've actually just read through those pages of grammar. Looking now at grammar, I'm looking at page 4 in our Ger and Karuna Tilaka book, where it says Pali nouns occur in the stem form. Okay, well you've seen the video on stems, and 3 genders: masculine, feminine, and neuter. Mostly, where you have, so to speak, logical gender or natural gender, Pali and Sanskrit will follow those genders. So in almost all cases, not all cases, but almost all cases, where you have a noun referring to a human being or an animal who is naturally male, then the grammatical gender will be masculine. And similarly, where you have a noun referring to a human or a higher animal that is naturally female, then the feminine gender will be used. So far, so good, but every noun has a gender, and where you get to just inanimate nouns, then it could be anything. It's a bit like French, men are masculine, women are feminine, but everything else. And why should a table be feminine, as it is in French and many other languages? It just is. And I can't remember if he gives the example here or elsewhere, but you have, for example, the word, even if something is a bit, boyish, it's not necessarily masculine. And for example, the word for an army, sena, is actually a feminine noun. There's nothing particularly feminine about an army. I mean, you tend to associate it with macho kind of stuff, but there it is. It just happens to be grammatically feminine. As you're learning Pali, it's not actually, you will recognize things, nouns, as being masculine, feminine, or neuter. It's not particularly necessary to learn by heart which they are, because what we're doing here primarily is just learning to recognize, to read, to understand the chants in Pali. So the important thing is to learn to recognize masculine, feminine, and neuter. There is one point that in Pali sometimes a noun can be both. For example, Dhamma is mostly masculine, but sometimes is treated as a neuter. A typical neuter plural ending of stems in a is the ani. So normally you'd see dhammas in the plural be dhamma, which is a masculine plural ending. But occasionally you see dhammani, which is a specifically neuter plural ending. The same, for example, with vukka, meaning a tree, rukka rather. It's sometimes masculine and sometimes neuter. The answer is it doesn't really matter because the importance is that you're just recognizing them as you see them. Going on here, there are two numbers, singular and plural. If you were studying Sanskrit, you would have the additional burden of learning of a dual form because Sanskrit has a separate series, a separate declensional form for the dual, where there's two of something, but that has entirely disappeared from Pali. Now there are 8 cases: nominative, accusative, instrumental, dative, genitive, dative, ablative, locative, vocative. Always in that order. The cases is a word that we use in English, but we've derived from Latin grammar. In Pali, they're called the vibhakti, Sanskrit vibhakti, literally meaning divisions, are the 8 divisions of the noun. That's a noun, and the same applies to some numerals and all adjectives. Will take a different form, a different ending, depending on where it is in the sentence. We don't have it in English, save for a few remnants. We do have remnants of cases in English. For example, we have our word whom, we have whom and whose. So this is an English remnant of the equivalent of the nominative, accusative, and genitive. And interestingly, the typical ending for an accusative singular in Sanskrit and Pali is an M, and we see exactly the same retained in a few words in English: whom, he and him, they and them. It's this M ending for the accusative, the object form. And with our word, the word whose, which we spell with an SC, but the apostrophe S ending for the possessive in English is actually a direct relic and is a direct descendant of the Sanskrit ending asya, and which becomes in Pali assa. So when we chant something like, let's say, buddhasya in Sanskrit, buddhassa in Pali, that's, in English we say the Buddha's apostrophe S of the Buddha. It's exactly that same ending. The difference is that there are 8 of them in Sanskrit and Pali, but only three left in English. So you've got a table on those of you who've got the Gair and Karunatilaka book with you. It's the table halfway down page 5. Mostly, I will not be exhorting you to memorize entire tables. The table halfway down page 5 is different, because I will virtually, to the extent that it lies within my power, command you to learn it by heart so that you really thoroughly know it. And I'm so pleased to see that Jen received that command with some joy, as expressed upon your face, Jen, because you'll scarcely read any line of Pali or Sanskrit where these different cases, particularly in this first declension, the declension, do not appear. It just happens. It's there the entire time. You really must know this by heart. There's not a vast amount that you've got to learn by heart, but this is absolutely primary number one. Number 1A and number 1B is the table halfway down page 7. The endings of the present tense of the verb. Those you must remember and learn so well that they become second nature. Most, not all of the rest, but most of the rest, it will be enough for you just to recognize it or know where to find it as you go along. So what we'll do then, we'll try and keep fairly well to time. We've come to 4 o'clock, so we'll have a break of 15 minutes. And I'll see you back here then in 15 minutes' time.
Thank you.
Okay, see you then.
Yeah.
Right, we'll just wait for people to gather. Right, 15. So I'm looking at half in the grammar section of Gair Karunatillaka, halfway down page 4. Says the most common use of the nominative is as the subject of a sentence. And it gives the example, bhikkhu vayamati, the bhikkhu strives. It's the same as in Latin and indeed across the Indo-European languages. It's the case of the subject of the sentence, or just what you use when you're naming something. So you're naming something then. So what's the difference between a stem and a nominative? Well, specifically, when you are talking about a word or putting a word in a dictionary, we will now discuss this word. We typically do it in its stem form. So let us discuss the word Buddha. Let us discuss the word bhikkhu. Let us discuss the word vihara, for example. That's its stem form. When it goes into a sentence, we're now going into running speech, then it's, as it were, got to put its uniform on. It's got to state in its own form what case it is, whether it's nominative, accusative, or any of the rest of them. So we talk about the word Buddha in the stem form. But if I were going to say something like the Buddha teaches the Dhamma, you wouldn't say Buddha Dhammang Deseti, you would say Buddho Dhamman Deseti, because now it's got to have a case appropriate to its position, what it's doing in the sentence. So Buddho Dhamman Deseti. That's the difference between a stem and the nominative. And if you don't get the cases right, the sentence will just sound weird and wrong. It might be understood, but it'll sound weird and wrong. I mean, in English, we say, he likes her and she likes him. We don't say, him likes she and her likes he. Unless you're a Somerset farmer, but we don't say it, and we have a limited number of variations of cases in English, but they have to be carefully observed in Pali. Now, looking at again about halfway down the page, 114.2, the accusative is generally used as the object of a verb, right? Him, them, whom in English. So it's the object of the direct object of a verb, the bhikkhu chittam pagganhati, the Buddha, the bhikkhu rather, uplifts the mind. The accusative is also used, as we've just seen, to indicate verbs of motion, like buddhang gacchami, I go to the Buddha. And the vocative, as the name indicates, vocare in Latin means to call. The vocative is the form that you use when you're calling out to somebody. When the Buddha was summoning his attendant, he would just call Ananda, hey Ananda. It so happens, again, it just so happens that for the nouns ending in a short a, the vocative is the same as the stem. It just happens to be in this particular case. It's by no means always. So stem Ananda happens to be the same as the vocative Ananda. And O Buddha, he Buddha. O Tathagata, he Tathagata. By the way, I mentioned the survival of cases in English, slight survival that we see in words like who, whom, and whose. There is just, I mentioned this in passing, an entertaining survival from very ancient times. We do actually have a remnant of a dative plural in English. So when we use, but I think I only know one phrase. When we use the phrase in the olden days, the en on the end of oldham is actually a survival into modern English of an old Anglo-Saxon dative plural, which those of you who know German will recognize it as the same as the dative plural in modern German. I think it's a loss that we've lost all our case endings, but that's just a private grief of mine. They're still alive and well, very much alive and well in Sanskrit and Pali, and indeed the Slavonic languages as well. So, looking at 114.4, the other cases are commonly the equivalent of English prepositions. Well, they're not exactly the equivalent of prepositions as such. It'd be rather more correct to say that we use prepositions in English to where instead they might use some case endings in Sanskrit and Pali, things like with and from. So as a general guideline, it says we might note that the dative case often but not always translates as the English to or for. We have the word that we all know, sukha, stem form sukha, meaning happiness. And there's another word, hita, meaning welfare or benefit. And the Buddha taught the Dhamma for the sukhaya, hitaya, for the happiness and for the welfare of the world. And if you look this dative, that's the dative ending, aya. And it's in the dead center of page 5 in your printed book. That's the table that you will all rapidly have learnt by heart to the extent that it will become fully internalized in you all rapidly. So going now down to the bottom. Four common types of noun appear in this reading. There's the masculine a stem, the neuter a stem, and the feminine e and e stems. I should mention, by the way, just to emphasize the importance of really mastering this table halfway down page 5, that just over 50% of all nouns and adjectives in Sanskrit and Pali belong to this a declension. So it's by far the most numerous in form, and that includes the feminines in the long a as well. And then down at the bottom of the page, it's just a reference to using the stem form in dictionaries, for example. So if you're talking about a word, as I said, or if you're looking a word up in a dictionary, you will look it up in its stem form. And dictionaries will normally indicate, I think, yeah, almost always will indicate which gender a word is. Yeah, I'm just looking now at the top of page 5. As I mentioned, there's some fluctuation in the endings of nouns, in the sense that sometimes a noun can belong to either gender, as I was mentioning earlier, Dhamma, usually masculine, but can be neuter. Rukkha appears as either masculine or neuter, with no distinction of meaning. Now, looking now at the table halfway down page 5, I'll just go through it. Nominative singular, dhammo, naro, viharo, anando. Not always, but very commonly, I think more often not, when you see a word ending in an or, that will be a signal that it's a masculine nominative singular, and will be the subject of the sentence. Not always, but that's mostly you'll find that is the case. It's the equivalent of the Latin masculine singular ending in us, and the Greek masculine singular ending nominative in os. Then we have the accusative dhammang. Again, that's the typical M ending of the accusative singular. And you'll find it in other forms of noun as well. For example, bhikkhu. The accusative is bhikkhu. So dhamma dhammang, bhikkhu bhikkhung. Genitive dhammassa. Is my iPad still up on shared screen? Okay, thanks. So in Sanskrit, that would be dharmasya. Pali dhammasa. The changes from Sanskrit dharmasya to Pali dhammasa are both regular, predictable changes. As I explained earlier, the r will become a double M, and so equally the s and the y. You will tend to find that it's the stronger consonant that is doubled. So dharmasya becomes dhammasa. And it's this characteristic S that you see in the genitive form that has survived through the Germanic languages and into our English possessive form, the one that write with an apostrophe S or S apostrophe. But this apostrophe S is a direct descendant, an etymological direct descendant of the assa, or Sanskrit asya ending. Looking at the dative, by the way, are there any of you who have not yet got the printed book, the Ger and Karuna Tillika book? Okay, you will need to get it. It so happens, I notice you raising your hand, Jai. It so happens I've got a couple of spare copies hanging around. So if you're going to be in on Saturday morning, I'll bring one in for you. If you look at the dative there, dhammaya, that aya ending is identical with the Sanskrit dative ending. It's dharmaya. And you'll see there it's written as dhammaya / assa. That means dhammaya, dhammasa as all alternatives. It may be a little early to introduce this now, but I will anyway. The fact of the matter is that the genitive and the dative in Pali have become mostly merged into one case. They've become, so the genitive has, as it were, absorbed the dative into it. So there's no separate dative form, with the exception of the singulars of stems ending in a. That's where you have the ending dhammaya. And that's just a feature of Pali. In Sanskrit, the genitive and the dative are never the same. In Pali, they're mostly the same, with the exception of these stems in a short a. We have the mai or the masa. The instrumental, the mena. Instrumental meaning, using it as an instrument of something. If you walk with a stick, danda is a stick. Dandena chalati, he walks with a stick, you see. And that ena ending is the typical instrumental ending. In fact, that ena ending survives in modern Hindi as the ne. You say I, I said main ne kaha. That ne is the same as the survival of the Sanskrit ena ending. The ablative, the ma. Now here we're going to see a little bit of a potential ambiguity here. The ablative meaning from, basically from something. In Sanskrit, it is dharmat. And in Pali, that just becomes dhamma, because Pali, no word will end in a consonant in Pali, apart from the subdotted M. But apart from that, where you have in Sanskrit a word ending in a consonant, you'll tend to find that in Pali that consonant simply drops. And the plural, if you look at this table here, at the top, the first line under plural, it says dhamma. In Sanskrit, it is dharmaha, with what we call the subdotted H. It's written as two dots in the Devanagari script, dharmaha. But equally in Pali becomes dhamma. So this is one instance of where in Pali you can get ambiguities which in Sanskrit would not exist. It's just it's something, mostly it'll be comprehensible enough. So for example, in Sanskrit, if you see dharmat with the at ending, the one that I'm bringing here, you will know that is the ablative form. If you see the ah with the ah and the subdotted H, you will know that that's the nominative plural form. They both become dhamma in Pali, and you just have to tell from context which it is. That's the bad news. The good news is it's almost always clear from context whether you're talking about a nominative plural or an ablative singular. Locative, dhamme, locative, as the name indicates, is in a place. So we have vihara, so vihare, in the monastery, nagara, a town, nagare, in the town. So the a becomes e. And the vocative is the same as the stem form, but only for nouns and adjectives in a short a. It's not like that across the board. Looking at the plural, we've just been looking at dhamma, which I said could be confused with the ablative singular. Now look at the accusative plural, dhamme. That's the same as the locative singular. I'm sorry about that, chaps, but that's just how it is. Again, in Sanskrit, the accusative plural would actually is dharman. Dharman. So unambiguously accusative plural. In Pali, it just becomes dhamme, I really don't know why. It just does. Genitive and dative plural, dhammanam. I'm going to write it in Sanskrit and Pali. Dharmanam, dhammanam. This, in Sanskrit, anam ending is typical of the genitive plural. And it varies. The first the R before the N varies. For example, in Sanskrit, of the bhikkhus, it would be bhikshunam, the unam. Take the word muni, for example, meaning a sage. Genitive plural would be muninam. Now notice that in Sanskrit, the genitive plural ends in a long anam. There is a rule of Pali that the vowel preceding a final M may never in any circumstances be long. So that is why you find Sanskrit dharmanam both long, Pali dhammanam. Now, I said earlier that the genitive and the dative have become mostly merged into one case in Pali. And you'll see in this table, dhammanam is given as the only form for both the genitive and the dative. Sanskrit has a separate form. It's dharmevya, actually, but we won't trouble too much with the Sanskrit now. But as I say, apart from the singular of the nouns and adjectives in a, where you have different forms of genitive and dative, everywhere else it's the same form. So in Sanskrit, if you see dharmanam, you say, that is unambiguously genitive plural. In Pali, if you see dhammanam, you say, well, it could be genitive plural or dative plural because they have merged. Ablative, instrumental and ablative in the plural end in ehi. Many of you will recognize these endings from the chants. And the locative plural, dhammesu, gives you in Sanskrit as well, dharmeshu. Dhammesu. This su ending, again, you find it across the board. The locative plurals always end in a su. There's one signal that helps you to spot it. You'll notice that in the Sanskrit forms I'm underlying now, I've written it with a dot under the S. That is the retroflex sh sound, because in Sanskrit it's dharmeshu, but this sh, as I was saying earlier, the sh, the palatal sh, and the retroflex sh, written respectively like this, sh and sh. They all merge into an undifferentiated s sound in Pali. Dharmeshu in Sanskrit, dhammesu in Pali. That's the locative plural. And just looking at the vocative now, that's the last entry in the table in the middle of page 5, dhamma. In the plural, the vocative is always the same as the nominative, there's one exception, but otherwise it's always the same as the nominative. The one exception is actually bhikkhave, O monks. You'll very frequently hear bhikkhave, O monks. Bhikkhavo is the nominative plural, But bhikkhave, you'll see very commonly seen at the start, when the Buddha starts to talk to the monks, he'll very frequently prefix his words with bhikkhave to attract their attention, o monks. But that is I think I'm right in saying that's the only exception in Pali to the rule that in the plural, the nominative is the same, sorry, the vocative is the same as the nominative. So a little bit more grammar before we get back to our reading. We've just looked at this masculine singular table in the middle of page 5. If you look down to the table at the bottom, that is the neuter, and the paradigm chosen for the neuter is rupam, meaning form. Or we know that word, we know the Buddha rupa. So rupa means form generally, and it also means a statue or a three-dimensional image, which is why we talk about the Buddha rupa. For those of you who may have traveled to India and know some Hindi and might be a little bit puzzled by hearing things like Vihar, Buddh, Rup, I would simply mention, again, I'm always subject to correction on this from Professor Nirmal, that in modern Hindi, the final short is not pronounced. That's why I said in modern Hindi, you talk about Vihar, Buddh, Rup.
Yes,
and I'm sorry, Professor Nirmal?
yes, sir, yes.
You're agreeing with me. Jolly good. I am relieved. Thank you. So it's the same actually across the languages of northern India. I mean, the languages that have descended from Sanskrit and the Prakrits, for example, Marathi, Gujarati, Punjabi, Nepali, then eastwards to Bengali. And so none of those will retain, I think I'm right in saying that none of those retain the final short ah. Whereas if you go down to southern India, they do retain that final ah, often in the form of an in Tamil or in Malayalam. Incidentally, we all know the word vihara, meaning a monastery. And we know the name of the state of modern India, Bihar state. It's actually that same word. It was the state, that part of India, it's where the Buddha lived and taught, which was full of monasteries, which is why it's called the Vihara state, the monastery state. Now the V of Sanskrit and Pali very often turns up as a B. I mean, even in Pali itself sometimes, but frequently in modern Hindi, it's going to turn up as a B. And of course, as I said, the final A isn't pronounced. So when you hear the word Bihar, it is etymologically, it's just a different pronunciation, effectively, of the word Vihara. Now, looking at this, the paradigm for rupa, nominative and accusative, rupam, it's not as bad as it looks. And I'll tell you exactly why. It's because the neuters in a are exactly the same as the masculines, with the exception only of the nominative and the accusative. All the rest of the cases, look at rupai, rupasa, rupena, rupa, rupe, rupanam, rupehi, rupe, exactly the same as the masculine. So the only difference in the neuters is that whereas in Dhamma, nominative Dhammo, accusative Dhammang, they both end in an ang in the neuter nouns. And in the plural, it's the ending ani, rupani. But apart from those two, the rest are the same. Also, another thing to remember, that in neuters, the nominative and the accusative are always the same. That's why you see in this table, nominative and accusative are blocked into one. Rupang for both, and rupani, both nominative and accusative. As for the pronunciation of this final subdotted M. In Vedic and in Sanskrit, a word can just, in Sanskrit, just rupam, which would write with just an ordinary AM, and in Devanagari it would be the same, just like the consonant M with a virama underneath it. It's written with a subdotted M in Pali. There has been some considerable discussion and argument, including some of you will know, many of you will know Rachel Hall, the argument including between Rachel Hall and me about what the correct pronunciation is. I have tended to the view, and you will hear this in most of the earlier videos I've done, that a final I will be pronouncing because I was saying, well, it's most likely that the Buddha would have been pronouncing it in the same way as Sanskrit. And we know that in Sanskrit, it would say rupam, not rupang. I'm slightly less sure now than I was before. It might well have been pronounced rupang with an ang sound. Dilly, can I ask you to unmute and come in with us? So,
Yes.
Dilly, in Sinhala,
Yes.
would you talk about a rupam with a m or rupang with a ng sound?
Rupam. We just say rupa. We don't add a M.
Okay, right. So in modern Sinhala, you say rupa. If you were chanting in Pali,
Yeah.
and this word, sorry,
Rupang.
rupam with a m sound.
No, not the
M sound. Okay, right.
Sabuddhang Saranang, like
Okay.
Rupang.
Okay, thanks. So it wasn't coming through entirely clearly. Not from you, it's just because of the system. So in Sinhala,
Yes.
they would use the ng sound.
Yes.
As we know, in Thai, invariably they'd use the ng sound.
Yeah.
But the phonetics of Thai are many words that alter their pronunciation in Thai. We don't have any Burmese speakers here. So anyway, it could well have been pronounced as an ung, even in Old Pali. However, in modern Pali, also in the modern pronunciations of Pali, and particularly those who do it most, namely the Sri Lankans and the Thais, then I'm coming round to pronouncing it as an ung.
Yeah.
Certainly in front of Rachel Hall, I'm never going to pronounce it as an M again. I don't want to go through that too many times, but in ancient India, it could well have been pronounced as a M, but for the sake of a quiet life and to follow how it's pretty much universally done across the Theravada world, and particularly, I don't know so much about Burma, but certainly among the Sri Lankans and the Thais, pronounced as an ung, so we can follow that. If you want to follow the Sanskrit way, nobody's going to be able to tell you. Well, certainly I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. So I think we can treat it as being as purely optional, whether it's an or an ung. One other thing I would say, particularly those who regularly do the samatha chanting, many of the chants that we have in samatha are specifically with us from a particular tradition. They may be particularly from a Sri Lankan tradition, or particularly from a Thai or Thai and Cambodian tradition. So when we're chanting a chant that we have specifically learnt from that source, then I think it's probably the best thing to do to pronounce it in the same way as the monks originally in that tradition would have pronounced it. Where they were going, it's always going to be an ung then. So I say it doesn't terribly matter. It's all the same phoneme. It's essentially the same sound.
But we pronounced Dutiyampi, ma.
That's right. No, that's different. So
Yeah.
dutiyampi, it's distinctly a m there because it's
Yes.
followed by a, and it's a labial sound pronounced with the lips.
Labial, yeah.
So that's why you don't say dutiyampi, but dutiyampi. But that's
Dutiyampi.
under the influence of the following p.
Yes.
And also,
Can I
if it,
can I add a few things here?
Yes.
Hello.
oh, sorry, I couldn't see you speaking.
Rupang is pronounced both in actually in India, Sri Lanka, and Burma as well. Since you were not sure about it, Burmese Pali also, they speak ang rather than
Yes.
Oh, so yeah, that's right. So I think I'm right. Is it, so the Burmese do, but the Sri Lankans and Thais definitely do.
because Sri Satyanarayan Goenka ji, he was a native of Burma before he arrived in India.
I'm sorry, who was I? Didn't catch well.
Satyanarayan Goenka, the Vipassana teacher.
Oh yes, that's right. Goenka, yes.
So if you listen to his chant, he will never say ma. He will always say ang.
Okay, that confirms it. Thanks very much for that. So that reinforces that then that we're all safe in pronouncing it as an ang. Now the other point then that Dilly mentioned in dutiyampi with a m, if the following consonant is pronounced, like dutiyampi, because the makes the n into a m. For instance, you say dhamampi. Now also, suppose you have cha. You can write that in one of two ways, meaning and. Because of the influence of the following ch, it's pronounced as a nasal. So you can write it as an M with a dot underneath, but you pronounce it damancha. Damancha. And you can sometimes write it with the Spanish with the tilde as well. And damanti, t meaning thus, unquote. You can write it in two ways. So
James, if you're writing right now, we can't see it.
You can't see it.
Or maybe it's just me, but I'm still on the first. I still see the first, the sort of last page of your iPad text.
Oh, can you see it moving up and down?
Oh yeah, I can.
Okay, sorry,
Sorry.
I've got virtually limitless electronic space on the iPad, but here I was squashing it up as if I was trying to save paper. Okay. The point I was making, so oops. Okay, can you see it all clearly now? Okay, yeah, thank you. So
I can't see it at all, actually. No.
That's odd. Can the rest of you see me writing? I've just written thumb. Okay, I'm wondering if it's something at your end because it seems to be coming through clearly for the others. So we have the
Okay, I'll check it.
The dhammang, the accusative form. Let's put a t on the end, literally meaning thus. It's often used to close off a verse. You can write it like that, but you pronounce it dhammanti because the would become a n under the influence of the following t. But you can also write it perfectly correctly. Both are equally correct, and you'll see them both. You'll write it as a n. So these nasals are pronounced differently depending on the following consonant. And there's the other one we haven't looked at, and that's the subdotted n. It's a feature of Sanskrit and Pali, repeated throughout the languages of modern India, that there is a distinction between the dentals and the retroflex, the da and the da. And many English speakers find it difficult to tell the difference, but for the native speakers of India, they're two totally different sounds, the da and the da. There is also the n that refers there's the name of Trunda. So it's not Trunda, but Trunda, with a dot under the D to indicate that it's the retroflex d sound, and automatically the nasal before it will become subglossal. So Trunda, n, Trunda. So you've got these various differences in the pronunciation of the n. I hadn't yet responded to Carey's email to me. Are you with us, Carey? No? About a problem with the differences, the diacritics on the nasals. But
Yeah, I'm here.
hopefully this will make it a little bit clearer now. Is that hunda, hundamayam, hunda? These are dentals. There's no dot under. But trunda, then trunda, that's the d sound. Trunda, and the dot under the n indicates that it's a retroflex following a d. The tilde over the n. So the word for five. Pancha. There's a slight difference in the sound of the n there. It's not panda, pancha. The n becomes slightly palatized because of the immediately following palatal ch sound, pancha. So hopefully this will resolve. Hopefully by now, Carey, it's all resolved. It's just the N and the M are pronounced slightly differently depending on the following sound.
Thank you.
So we've got to the bottom of page 5 on the grammar. Oh, goodness me, we're almost... Oh, no, so I was thinking 5. No, we've got 20 minutes left. Got to the bottom of page 5. I'm feeling like getting onto a bit of reading to wind up rather than that. And I think there's a limit to the amount of grammar that people can take in one go. I have to recognize that not everyone else is a language geek like me, so let's get back to the reading. So let me call up the okay, do you all see my written text now? Okay, jolly good. Thank you. So going now to the second part of it. By the way, the word Sangha, we all know the word Sangha. In fact, we've come to use it in English. It's a curious, it means just striking together, knocking together, people you bump into, because Sangha, because the ga actually comes to hitting or bumping. So it's literally the people you bump into. It just came to mean a community of people. But I've dealt with it in some detail. If you want to go further, where you see the two colon space and word, that is a signal to you that I've dealt with it in the explanatory glossary. And this device of looking up head words in that way is one that I borrowed from the Pali Text Society dictionary. So if you want to go explore further, all you need to do is copy and paste that. Let me give you one, show how it's happening. the copy paste. Okay, called up the explanatory glossary there. Find copy Sangha, and it takes you then doing it in that way within the explanatory glossary. Oops, sorry, oops. There we are. It takes you straight to the place where I've repeated the double colon space, straight to the place in the explanatory glossary where I actually deal with that word. As for any other word search, if you just type in that string Sangha, then you'll get hits for every single occurrence of that string in the entire document. If you use the double colon space, it'll take you straight to the place where I've specifically dealt with that word. And that's how you'll do it. That's how you'll find it in the online Pali Text Society's dictionary anyway. If you just type in Sangha, it will give you every single occurrence of that string in the entire corpus of the dictionary. But if you want to look it up as a head word, as in looking up that word in the dictionary, double colon space will take you to that spot in the Pali Text Society dictionary. Again, I think just to give you an illustration of what I mean, hopefully I can, oops. I hope it hasn't disappeared again. Pali English Dictionary. Here we are, mercifully back with us. I'm just calling up, this is the Pali Text Society's dictionary. So it sometimes does this to me on Zoom. I call it up and then it just, although it gives me a quarter of a page and then it comes back. So for example, I'll give you this example. If we look up Sangha, look what happens there. 175 hits for Sangha, because that's just given me a hit for every occurrence of that string of letters in the entire dictionary. If, however, I do double colon space, then just one, it takes you straight to the place where that word is dealt with and defined. So that's the purpose of the double colon space. That's why I say I've copied this method from the Pali Text Society's dictionary. Back to where we were. So, tutiyampi. Tutiyampi, dutiya, Sanskrit dvitiya, just means second, as in an ordinal number, first, second, and third. Used here, you'll notice here that it ends in an Now you've just seen the ending for the neuters, as in rupang. You will very, very often find that where you have an adjective in the neuter on its own, it's used as an adverb. So dutiya, stem form, masculine singular, dutiyo, put it in the neuter, dutiyang, and with a p and after it, dutiyampi, that means second, but used as an adverb, meaning for a second time. The p ending here means, in Sanskrit, api, in Pali, api, or just pi, means something like even or also. So dutiyampi, could be translated into English something like yet a second time. It doesn't really add much to the meaning, but it adds something to the flavor. I go to the Buddha yet dutiyampi, yet a second time. And the rest of that verse is the same. Note here, etymologically, this dutiya, dvitiya, we have the stem form dwa in Sanskrit and dvi in Pali. In English, two, we write the W, but we don't pronounce it. It's the same word. In the German zwei, in Swedish två. So that said that dwa has kept itself in place right through to modern English. and also via Latin as well. The dual. It's that same word meaning two. And the rest is the same. And then tatiyampi, the root is tri, which is the same as our English word three. And in Latin tres, and in combining form tri, which in English we would pronounce a triangle, something with three angles. So tritiya means third in Sanskrit, and in Pali it becomes tatiya. Notice again, we have the Sanskrit tra. Pali mostly will not allow a consonant followed by a r directly together, so the Sanskrit tri becomes the Pali ti. So in fact, our modern English three is closer to the Sanskrit than Pali is, because we retain that r, whereas Pali has dropped it. And again, tatiyampi, yet a third time. Oh, incidentally, I've just done a little note here. The Saranataya, a traya in Sanskrit is a trio, a threesome of something. So a trio, traya in Sanskrit, taya in Pali. So the Saranataya is the refuge trio, the Saranat trio, namely the triple refuge. I'm feeling inclined to use our last few minutes in starting off with the next text. Do I hear any objection? Oh, good. Chittam bhikkhave adantam hato anattaya samvattatiti. Let's just look at that first line. Oh, I mentioned earlier this vocative plural, O monks. There we are, bhikkhave. You'll very, very frequently see it. I say it's an irregular vocative plural. But fear not, because that's the only case, as far as I know, in the whole of Pali where this irregular vocative plural appears. And you'll see it again and again. Now, notice there that I didn't say chittang bhikkhave. Pronouncing the word on its own, I just said chittang. But we've got a b. Ignore the comma there. They didn't have commas in the old days. So chittang bhikkhave, it's immediately followed by a labial, by the b. A b. And so it would be pronounced as a m, chittang bhikkhave. If you were pronouncing it very slowly and deliberately wanted to leave a pause, then it would resolve into chittang. You say chittang bhikkhave. But that would depend just on the style of the speaker. If he was speaking it as a rapid sequence of words, chittang bhikkhave would automatically come out as a m. But separating the words, chittang bhikkhave. And the same here, adantam hato. It's followed by a m. So on its own, you'd say adantam on its own, but it's directly followed by a m, another labial, so it's pronounced as a m. Adantam chittam bhikkhave adantam mahato anattaya samvattati. This mahato we've just been looking at these stems ending in a. There are also, stems ending in an u, bhikkhu. Stems ending in i, muni. there are also, this is just to whet your appetite, we've got this wonderful additional complexity of the consonantal stems, stems that actually end not in a vowel, but in a consonant. For stems ending in a we'll deal with this in detail soon. Soon, I mean, in a lesson quite soon. But stems ending in a consonant, the O is typical of the genitive / dative ending. Now, listen to this. Namo, by the way, the Namo meaning homage. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Now, the final assa is the dative / genitive. Namo sambuddhassa, homage to the fully enlightened one. But what is the explanation of these ones in O? Namo tassa bhagavato arahato. That is the genitive / dative of the consonantal declension. That's the declension where the stem ends in a consonant. A lot of this stuff you chant regularly, and so now a lot of the grammar you probably already know without, as it were, knowing that you know it. But you know, since you're so used to chanting Namo Tassa Bhagavato, that just know that that is the genitive / dative, homage to the Bhagavato, to the if it were the accusative, it would be Bhagavantam, for example. So Mahato, again, you all know what Maha means. It's the same Maha as in Maharaja, great king. Maharashtra is in the name of the state in India, is the old meaning of it is the great kingdom, Maharashtra, Rashtra from Raja. So this Mah root, meaning great, which we still have in English in the form of mighty, M-I-G-H-T-Y. It's the German machtig. Macht means force in German. It's the same root as we have the Wehrmacht is the defense force. It turns up in our English word to make, because you are exerting power over what you are making. It turns up in the word machine, that whereby you can exert power and force. It turns up in the word the Magi, the 3 Magi who visited Bethlehem, the wise ones, the mighty ones. So this Maha turns up all over the place. And in its adjectival form, it's on its own, it's pronounced Maha or Mahan. Consonantal stem, just note the genitive dative is Mahato. So, we're going to have to wind up soon because I'm going to have to shoot off. But I'm just going to finally look at this word adantam very briefly. Root dam, meaning to tame. In fact, it's no coincidence. It's identical here in Vedic and Pali, the dam root. No coincidence that it's a bit like our English word to tame, because it's the same word. If you make a past participle by adding ta, regular way, in English our past participle, we normally add an ed. In Sanskrit and Pali we add a ta. Dam ta automatically becomes danta, because you can't say damta, danta. So danta means tamed. Put the a in front of it, and that negates it, untamed. And we have the same in English, of course, via Greek. atomos, to cut. Atomos, we have atom, uncut. Before a vowel, it becomes an. For example, orexis, or orexi means appetite in Greek. If you are anorexic, it means you are without appetite. So this negating prefix a, just meaning not, a or un, and our English prefix un, where you negate something, is directly cognate with that. So adanta in Pali, same in Pali and Sanskrit, adanta, and English untamed, they are etymologically the same word, but you can see adanta, untamed. It's the same. So the chittam bhikkhave adantam, the mind, the chitta, O monks, untamed, mahato anataya samvattati. Brinya samvattatiti, I'll explain that next time. So the mind, O monks, untamed, leads to great anataya. Now, earlier I was talking about atta, Sanskrit artha, meaning in this context, artha means benefit or profit, something is good for you. Negate it, anatta, or anatta in its stem form, dative here, anataya, to non-profit, meaning harm. It's the negated form. In Sanskrit would be anartaya, anartaya, Pali anataya. Incidentally, do not confuse these two words.
We can't see what you're writing, James.
Sorry, thank you for reminding me. Sorry, thank you. Oh, hang on, did you see me writing danta? Then you are collectively guilty because you all should have shouted in unison. Let us see the iPad. Please do shout if I'm doing that to you, writing something new. Please do shout immediately. So this word anatta, I mean, for example, no Hindi speaker would ever confuse between anatta and anatta. To the Hindi ear, those are two totally separate words, and I see Professor Nirmal is nodding, thank you, that the Hindi speaker could not confuse them, because the ta, the dental ta unaspirated, and the aspirated t form are as different to the ear of the speakers of the Indian languages, notably Hindi, as t and th are to the ear of the English speaker. They're two completely different sounds. Do not confuse anatta, meaning non-profit and therefore harm, with anatta, non-self. We're at 5:15. I have to shoot off. It's an experience I've had again and again when I've just got this class to do on Zoom, different face-to-face on Zoom, and before the class starts, I say, oh my God, why am I doing this? But then at the end of it, really, I know why I'm doing it. So I'm invigorated, and we'll be back for more next time. So thank you for being with me. I think now if the numbers remain at about this level, I think we can now move on to far more interaction, getting you to recite things and asking individual questions. So although you want to see the many people having the benefit of learning Pali, if we are going to remain at this kind of number, then we can hopefully conduct the classes as several of you here will remember. We used to do it in up until July of last year with a great deal of interaction. So I'm very relieved. Quite the right thing to say, we wanted everyone to turn up, but actually it's very helpful that we're down to this kind of number. So next time round, we'll be prepared for a bit of individual performance and questioning, unless, as I say, you don't want to, in which case you're allowed to blank yourselves out. So thank you all very much, and we will meet again hopefully next week, inshallah. Okay. Okay. See you then.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
James.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Bye then. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye then. Bye.
Thank you, James. Bye.
Bye. I'm just trying to, oops, stop share. I'm trying to shut it off. I can't find my buttons disappeared. Okay. Okay, bye then, Dilly. See you. Bye.